Hi, everyone. Hi, Isaac. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see everybody. We're just going to give a few minutes for people to log in and get going, but welcome. All right, well, welcome everybody. It's a couple of minutes after 4, so I think we're just going to get going and start this conversation. So welcome. My name is Dr. Tom Griffin. I'm an assistant professor and assistant director at the Ted Rogers School of Hospitality and Tourism Management and the Institute for Hospitality and Tourism Research at Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson. Nice to see you all. Welcome. I recognize many of you, but also a couple of new people. Really nice to see you. We're going to start today with a land acknowledgement, which is an important part of the process. So Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. So welcome everybody. We're excited to see you and excited to host this conversation today with Omar from Parks Canada. Before we get started with Omar, I just want to introduce the Institute and talk about the series that we're offering. So we're the Institute of Hospitality and Tourism Research. And so we we conduct research of scholarly value that has some application and use to the industry. And so we're really interested in trying to connect industry with academics and our students to get people excited and engaged about the topics that are important to us. This particular series, the Compass series, is a speaker series, and we've had a series of great speakers over the last couple of semesters. And it's been a really exciting and engaging process where we've been able to connect with people from all over the world and come to listen to these interesting, useful topics. If you'd like to learn more about our institute, please visit HTMResearch.ca, where you can find out lots of useful information. Some of the research areas that we focus on: destination management and marketing, sustainability, and festivals, especially Indigenous tourism, and visiting friends and relatives tourism as well is a topic that we're interested in. We have a podcast series, which is called Behind the Study. That is thanks to Brian, that is clicking the buttons behind the scenes. Thank you, Brian. So each episode features a different researcher and explores their unique background and their career path. We've just finished season 2 with somebody called Dr. Frederick Demonge. I bet it's a fascinating listen. Everybody should go and download it now. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on our website, htmresearch.ca. So today we are very fortunate to have Omar McDadi speak to us about the work that's going on at Rouge Park, which Omar is the field unit superintendent. So I guess that makes you the big boss. Is that basically what that means of Rouge Park?
The big colleague, yeah.
The big colleague. All right, good.
Yeah.
And so just to introduce Omar a little bit, Omar's been a big friend of the school. He's given guest speakers at different events in our classes. He helped me with my second year research class last semester, which was really great, and gave the students, a couple of whom I can see here, a really interesting, useful topic to play around with in the class. And so he's also a member of our advisory committee at the Institute of Research, And so we really kind of value that relationship between our school and the park. And that's, you know, large part down to Omar. So thank you. So Omar began his career with Parks Canada in 2004 as a student wildlife biologist in Kootenay, Yoho, and Banff National Parks, where he tracked bighorn sheep and delivered educational programs in schools throughout the Canadian Rockies. Over the next 11 years, Omar worked throughout the Canadian Rockies as a park interpreter, mountain guide, fire information officer, and as a public relations and communications officer. In 2014, Omar returned to the GTA to work on the establishment of the Rouge National Urban Park, where every day he's grateful to work with such a dedicated and talented team. And Omar has been the superintendent of the park since May 2018. And he considers this project the most meaningful of his career. And, you know, I've listened to Omar speak a few times now, and it's very clear that he has that passion for the park and what goes on around the park and because of the park and what it helps people experience. So I'm going to hand it over to Omar. Thank you very much for attending. As we're listening to Omar, I'm going to encourage you to type into the chat, and there will be time at the end of the session as well to ask Omar some more questions and get into a bit of a discussion as well. So thank you for joining, Omar. Thank you very much. Looking forward to your talk.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Great to see you. Great to see everyone. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you for having me. I appreciated the land acknowledgement in Rouge National Urban Park. Parks Canada is really lucky to work with 10 First Nations with a historic, cultural, and present-day connection to the park, and that's a relationship that has great meaning and great importance for us. And it's a foundational relationship. One of the first relationships we established when creating the National Urban Park over the last decade, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I think we do have a really special relationship with Ryerson. And it's a relationship that grows over the years. We've hired lots of students from Ryerson. We've worked on some great research projects together. We've hired students through the Institute to do some very comprehensive social science research for the park and to help us better understand the demographics of the Greater Toronto Area in the earlier years of this project. So we really appreciate that. And most recently, we got some social science work done to help us better understand the needs of students for our future visitor learning, education, visitor and community center, which I'll talk about a little bit in this presentation. And there were some really great insights. So that was some great work and really helpful information. I'm going to be speaking today about the socioeconomic and natural capital benefits of Rouge National Urban Park. So the ways that the park itself contributes to the community, to the economy, and as well to helping to restore and protect our environment. And I'll be looking at things, talking about things in terms of the socioeconomics, the short-term benefits, of which there are many, and then the long-term vision and potential future benefits, which present us like many, many great opportunities. And us, I mean the collective, us, and many people hopefully can get involved in the park and see opportunities for themselves in the park, either working with Parks Canada or independently through tourism and related fields, science, hospitality. So I'll start it there, but I think I'll just move my slides. Just a moment, my screen's not moving. There we go. Just to back it up a little bit about Parks Canada, we are the world's first national park service, and Tom was mentioning some of my background there. I've been really lucky to work in many national parks across the country. We're the world's first national park service, so there are many other countries now with national park services, but we started 110 years ago. We protect over 450,000 square kilometers of land and inland waters. That's about the size the country of Sweden, which is a pretty large country. So that's a tremendous responsibility and great honor. And we have multiple objectives, but our number one priority is always conservation. Here's a beautiful map of the country, and you can see some of our places spread out from coast to coast to coast. Our national parks are depicted in green here. Most of our national parks typically are quite a ways away from large population centers, large metropolitan areas. Rouge National Urban Park in the Greater Toronto Area is a notable exception. So you can see that small purple dot on the map. One of the benefits of the park, and one of the reasons Parks Canada was interested in creating the park almost a decade ago now, was the opportunity to connect to approximately 20% of Canada's population lives within 1 hour's drive of the park. And this is a segment of the population that historically has had to travel great distances to get to a national park or Parks Canada place in the country. You'd have to drive a minimum of 2-3 hours or hop on a plane to get to most of these places. Some of these places you can only get to by a float plane, and they're incredibly remote. Some of them only have about 200 visitors or 100 visitors per year in the far northern reaches of the Arctic. So this is a great opportunity to bring the mandate of Parks Canada close to Greater Toronto Area residents who have historically been underrepresented in terms of opportunities and visitation to national parks. So in terms of the strategic benefits of the park, well, I mean, it's 30 minutes from downtown, and it's the only national park in the country that's connected to public transit. You can take the commuter train there, you can take the subway, and then one bus to get there. It's also connected to many active transportation networks, incredible cycling opportunities to get to the park along the waterfront trail, and in the future, the Meadowway Trail, which will connect the Don Valley to the Rouge Valley over a 16-kilometer trail in the Hydro Corridor, which is being built up over the next 5 to 7 years. The park itself is massive. It's about 79 square kilometers in size, and it spans, well, it goes from Toronto, the Scarborough part of Toronto, through Pickering, through Markham, all the way to the township of Whitchurch-Stouffville, and then into the township of Uxbridge. So it goes through Toronto and then York and Durham regions. It's one of the largest urban parks in the world, and it's the largest urban park in North America. Just for context, it's more than 50 times larger than High Park in downtown Toronto, which is the largest urban park in the city, and 23 times larger than Central Park in New York. The lands for the park have been donated by all levels of government. This shows you what's possible when everyone works together, and that's such a great part of the Rouge story. It's a park that's been created over many years by many different citizens in many different jurisdictions and levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, all working together, and all of them have donated land and made land available to Parks Canada for the creation of this gem. So the Government of Canada committed to creating the park in 2011, and in 2015, we had our very own law passed, our very own legislation in the House of Commons in Ottawa. And when that legislation passed, our park was created, and it's grown every year since May of 2015. We only had a little bit of the lands back then. We now manage 95% of all the lands that you can see here on this map. And in 2019, we released our management plan, which is basically our plan for how we're going to manage the park responsibly over the next 10 years. And it highlights all the socioeconomic and natural capital components that we propose. So all the trails we're going to build, the visitor center will build, all of our ecological restoration work, and the tourism aspect of the park that we're building. So we're not quite what you would call market ready, but the park is very much up and coming and in development. So over the next few years, I mean, this is an incredibly exciting time in the park and in the park's life and trajectory. It's also a little bit hectic. There's a lot on the go right now. We are building dozens and dozens of kilometers of trails connecting the lake in the south to the Oak Ridges moraine, the rolling hills of the northern end of the park. We're building an education and visitor center and other visitor facilities. We are restoring ecosystems and bringing back species at risk. And we're protecting some of the last farmland in the greater Toronto area. So there's so much to do, and it's a labor of love, and every day is quite exciting, but there is a lot to do. So one of the things that makes the park unique is that it protects natural, cultural, and agricultural heritage and features over 10,000 years of human history. So we're talking about a human presence that goes back over many generations and many centuries. And we have some of the oldest known Indigenous sites in the country, and we're really honored to work with our Indigenous partners who work with us in the field. And we've been doing vast amounts of archaeological work in the park, in all areas of the park with our Indigenous partners to better understand the history of the area, which is so, so rich. But most national parks, they mainly focus on and have a mandate to protect natural heritage, so forests, rivers, meadows, wildlife, and cultural heritage as well, things like artifacts, older buildings. What's really unique about our park, even though it's an quote unquote urban park, we do have very significant agricultural lands in the park. In fact, we've got the richest, rarest, and most fertile soil in the country, class 1 soil, all throughout the park, and a farming presence that goes back to Indigenous peoples. And then the first European pioneer settler farmers arrived in 1804 in the Rouge Valley, and many of their ancestors remain farming in the park today. We have the last remaining farm in the city of Toronto where they grow delicious sweet corn that you can purchase throughout Scarborough at roadside stands in the summertime and into the fall. That's Sweet Rich Farms, if you're interested or have heard of them before. In terms of where we're at today, well, COVID-19 has highlighted the importance of public green spaces, perhaps more than ever, urban public green spaces in particular. Our sites have never been so busy. And when I talk to people from the City of Toronto or the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, they're all saying the same things too, that because people have had no place to go, we've been under lockdown, we remain under lockdown, we can't travel anywhere. Our parks and urban green spaces have really become a lifeline for locals and residents. It's one of the only places you can go to help improve your mental and physical health. And people have been coming. And so a lot of the work we're undertaking right now is trying to update facilities and infrastructure that we've inherited. Unfortunately, some, and in fact, a lot of the amenities that we inherited, which we're very grateful for, so I'm not complaining, but a lot of the facilities that we've inherited are not able to keep up with the pressures of today, and you know, the visitation of today is putting a lot of pressure on these places, and we're talking about older roads. We're talking about places that don't have a lot of mitigations in place to prevent flooding, like you see on this access road to the beach. So the infrastructure in place is struggling to keep up with the demands of today, let alone the demands of tomorrow. So this is a big part of our work right now, is trying to fix and enhance existing infrastructure and putting in place better new infrastructure, park trails that are fully accessible for people of all kinds of physical abilities. I made a little list here, which I won't, which we'll talk about a little bit, but here's just some of the ways that the park contributes to the community, and it's pretty immense. We're talking about universal accessibility in terms of all the things we build and design, free annual programs in the times of non-COVID in the park for kids and residents, all our work on endangered species. There's so many things that we're trying to do to contribute to the community. And many of these have significant socioeconomic and environmental benefits, if not all, most of them. When we talk about the economic impact of our national parks, it's an area that has not really been looked at a lot historically. But economists and sociologists are starting to look at these things more and more, and demographers. And we're learning just what a huge role our protected places play in the Canadian economy and in the local economy increasingly. So Parks Canada places contribute over $4 billion to Canada's GDP annually. So that includes investments made by Parks Canada, as well as visitor spending, so from a tourism perspective. And labor income, our sites generate $2.5 billion in labor income and $532 million in tax revenues, as well as approximately 40,000 full-time jobs across the country. So those are jobs that support in a major way Canada's tourism sector, and Parks Canada is the largest single contributor of products, tourism products in the Canadian marketplace in terms of tourism. So Canada, taken across the country from coast to coast to coast, and all of our sites, our 46 national parks, our 171 national historic sites, our 1 national urban park, and our marine conservation areas. Parks Canada places make a significant contribution to the Canadian economy and have a significant economic impact. In terms of, when you create something, you generate a lot of activity, and in creating the National Urban Park, there are many short-term and long-term local economic impacts and benefits. Starting with the short-term benefits, we're talking about good, eclectic jobs. We have hired students from Ryerson, and we've hired a lot of students, throughout the region, and watched them grow and develop over the years, and it's been amazing. One of the great things about working for Parks Canada is that you can be a musician, a biologist, an engineer, an HR specialist, a researcher. People who work here come from all walks of life. You could be a carpenter, an electrician. So I think that's really great. It's a very eclectic workplace, but it's not just our jobs. All the work that I was talking about, the building of trails, the building of a visitor center, require specialized expertise. And we're in such a great place. The labor market is incredible here in the Greater Toronto area. The resources that we have at our disposal are immense, and we're able to draw upon really amazing organizations, contractors, companies, and research institutions like Ryerson, who we've been working with a lot over the years. We also provide skills training and development. We talked about labor income, so that's significant here, and Indigenous economic benefits. So we do hire many people from the 10 nations that we're privileged to work with, and they join us to assist with many, many aspects of the park, all aspects of designing the park, archaeological work, tree planting, educational programs in our campground, and that's just to name a few. In terms of natural capital, these are, we're talking about things like ecosystem services, And Parks Canada Places provide approximately $266 billion in ecosystem services from coast to coast to coast. So that's a coarse estimate. It is really hard, although economists increasingly are trying to measure this, it's really hard to measure the monetary it's challenging to measure the impacts that ecosystem services have and to quantify them in terms of finances. That's something that is an emerging field of study, but ecosystem services include things like pollination, carbon sequestration and stored carbon, flood controls, food production, soil formation, clean air, and so much more. Things that have historically been undervalued in terms of their contributions economically speaking. The David Suzuki Foundation estimated in 2012, so this is older information, older data based on a smaller park, that the Rouge Park would provide $115 million per year in ecosystem services and economic benefits. I took out a calculator and just kind of updated that for inflation and the larger park that we now have. And that's estimated to be $144 million per year. But I'm absolutely certain that that is a very conservative estimate in terms of the natural capital benefits of the park. And I think as the methodologies become more refined in this field, that we'll be able to better quantify that value over time. I think the return on investment in creating parks is huge. And the Rouge has been blessed with a budget of $170 million over 10 years to fully develop the park. So that's something that we're incredibly grateful for and very fortunate to have those resources over that period of time to completely build out the park, to restore the park, and to put in place the foundational trails and infrastructure that we need to run this place responsibly for the 7 generations to come. A 2017 study by HR&R Advisors, which is not an environmental think tank, but they're a real estate and economic development consultancy. So I think that's important to note. They found in Dallas a 7-to-1 return on investment for every dollar spent on park development. The same study found that is a 50-to-1 return on investment for every dollar spent on trail development. Trails in particular are really crucial to community development, providing access for people to move from one place to another, to gain services, to gain employment, and to improve physical and mental health outcomes. And certainly in our park, we're really focusing on trail development. We're building dozens and dozens of kilometers of ecologically responsible, universally accessible new trails, which are the lifeblood of the park. And all future opportunities in the park, I think, will be tied in some way to trails and the opportunities that brings for us and for the region. When we talk about investing in natural capital, these things, we talk about the socioeconomic benefits, but they're also inextricably linked to the improvements we're trying to bring to the park environment to try to improve the ecological integrity and ecosystem health of the park. These actions also in turn drive the economy to a certain extent. So we've planted well over 113,000 trees and shrubs. We're planting 45,000 more today. That supports tree planters, that supports nurseries, that supports mom and pop organizations that do this kind of work. We've created over 70 hectares of wetland and fish habitat. There's an incredible amount of engineering work that actually goes into that and landscape design. We've created over 26 hectares of forest habitat. We've released 396 threatened turtles, back into the park. And so the labor force that we're drawing upon, I think when people think of parks, they often think of just biologists and park managers, but we're talking about many trades people here. We're talking about architects and engineers. We're talking about landscape architects. We're talking about graphic designers. We're talking about researchers. We're really drawing upon a huge pool of people and talent. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunities that come with park creation. And we have a mandate and try to diversify who we work with as much as possible to put things out for open competition, to really try to provide a range of opportunities and economic benefits to a wide range of Canadians and residents. We talked about investing in natural capital, but we're also investing in agricultural capital. And this is a part of the park story that's not often talked about a lot. But we have completed 60 agricultural enhancement projects since 2015. We've started a number of really great events that support and celebrate agriculture in the park. We're going to be providing longer-term leases for park farmers, which will allow them to make more investments in sustainable agriculture. Until the park was created, the farmers have been on year-to-year leases for a range of reasons. And when you're only going to be in an area for a year, you probably don't invest in it as much. But we're really trying to encourage longer-term investments and longer-term planning. And we will be providing lease terms that go up to a maximum of 30 years. So you can plan a whole generation in all the great work and all the great food that you can grow over that period of time with certainty. The park is already home to some great markets and new picks, and we see many more opportunities to diversify this in the future. Here's that's me with at that point, she's 18 months old now, but she was 9 months old at the time. That's at Reeser's Market and UPick in the Markham-Stouffville area of the park. And that's an incredible experience. So when I think about the future of this park and I look at tourism opportunities, our opportunities from a food tourism perspective are astronomical. And I think there's a lot of work and a lot of really good work we're going to be doing in that area in the years to come. We're also investing in cultural capital or cultural heritage. So we've inherited, with these lands, we've inherited over 200 houses, many of which have heritage value. We try to save what we can, and we also work with partners to save things that we are not able to, or we don't have the finances allocated for. So I can think of a really good example of that is we had a house that otherwise would have been bulldozed, but we worked with a group known as Blue Door, and they provide social housing for people in the York region, and they are able to raise capital funding and invest over $100,000 into this house, and now it's used as a community to support the community programming in the area. So I think it's a really great win that we get to support such a great cause in the park in a building that we would have otherwise needed to tear down. So here's, that's the house actually that I was just referring to, and we work with Blue Door, as well as building up and raising the roof. As part of this work, not only is there a nice, like a family living there now, but the work that was done to save and restore and refurbish and rebuild this house was done using organizations that hire at-risk populations and provide them with technical and trade skills training. And so that's something we feel really great about as well. We're also making significant investments in green infrastructure. And so I think I'll just show you here, our plans and vision behind our future learning visitor and community center, which will be across the street from the Toronto Zoo. And after 8 years of searching, we found this great location on lands that the zoo has kindly agreed to give to Parks Canada. And it's going to be amazing. So it's an area that is a great strategic location. It's connected to public transit. It's connected to the 401. We've run very successful shuttle buses to this location over many years. It's next to some of the most iconic trails and vistas in the park. One of the best places to see the fall colors in the city of Toronto. It'll be connected to the Meadowway Trail, which I talked about earlier. And there's parking capacity there, so we don't have to take down any trees or anything like that. It's just an old overflow parking lot that we're refurbishing and taking to the next level. So we're working with our Indigenous partners on this, with many community groups. We've got some great building design principles where accessibility is very important. We want to lead with sustainable design. It'll be one of Canada's first net carbon zero buildings. And we're really lucky to work with such great firms. We've hired Moriyama and Tashima from Toronto. They're an incredible firm. They designed the Aga Khan, the Canadian War Museum, amongst many other iconic Canadian contemporary buildings. So we did work with Ryerson on this project to get some great social science information to better understand the needs of students and things they'd be looking for in a center like this. One of the interesting insights was a desire to see quiet study spaces, and that's something that we're contemplating in the design of this facility. I think in terms of the long term, I think that's what's, there's so much short-term impact right now from a socioeconomic and natural capital perspective. But I think it's really the future that's the most exciting. Once the park is completely built up, there's so many things that could happen here. Market-ready farming opportunities and the diversification of the food that's grown in the park. Think about the food vendors and the tourism opportunities associated with that. We're opening our first community garden in May. I think our heritage tourism opportunities here are very rich. And I look at other national parks and some of the signature events that they've created, such as the Writers' Festival at Woody Point, in Grossmore National Park in Newfoundland, which is another real gem in the Canadian system of national parks. And I'm really excited to see what events we will create here in the fullness of time. We're reopening the only campground in the city of Toronto as part of this project, which has tremendous spillover economic benefits with people visiting and dining in local restaurants as part of the camping experience. I think it's really unique because it really allows you to have an authentic, rural, rustic experience, all in the backdrop of an incredible city in Canada's largest metropolitan area. So you can combine hiking with five-star dining that perhaps is only available in urban places. So I think that is really exciting for what's to come in the future and the many authentic experiences that will be provided in the park. There's also incredible career opportunities for people in the region. And I think the greatest thing about this is that people will hopefully see opportunities for themselves and want to start up business opportunities in the park or that are linked to the park, like tour operators, of which we have none today. I think every national park in the country has a tour operator, if not many, many, many tour operators. We don't have any because we're not quite market ready yet. But the opportunities that we have here in the fullness of time are really exceptional. So I'm excited to see what the future will bring. And I thank you very much for your time and attention, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Omar. Fascinating. I have a couple of questions myself, but I'd like to open it up to anybody on the call. Feel free to bring yourself off mute or type into the chat and I will read your question on your behalf, whatever you prefer. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Please.
Thank you, Tom. Great presentation, by the way. I just have a question about, you mentioned all these benefits that the Rouge Park has, and I was wondering how you may see in the future prevention planning of the park, how some of these benefits might be messaged to members of the public or people who are visiting the park.
Thanks, Carson. And Carson, I think you just sent me an email the other day, and I forwarded on to our visitor experience manager. And great vision behind prevention for Parks Canada. I look at your PDF. So I think prevention for us is trying to stop issues before they happen. One of the things I didn't touch on today is we have some significant, some very serious issues in the park when it comes to dumping, littering, pollution. We started a TIPS hotline last year, and we've really ramped up our law enforcement and our compliance or prevention work. But to me, it's all about working with the community. The opportunities we have to work with the community are tremendous. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of community organizations that are keen to work with Parks Canada, keen to have a role in the park. And I think through working with the community, stopping issues before they happen, through education and awareness, the problems we face are all this will lead to a greater end result and for us to be more quote unquote market ready. I think we need more time to kind of get our house in order and to really lift up the park and to really bring it to a higher level and make it more pristine, because it's an amazing place, and it's one of the most biologically diverse places in all of Canada. Really, it's a miracle it survived. It's been altered so much. 80% of the landscape has been altered over time. Industrially speaking, there's no other national park has thousands and thousands and thousands of houses backing onto it. So it's a miracle it's made it, and we're here to just lift it up a little bit. It'll be more market ready in the future, and prevention is absolutely crucial in terms of how we get there, because we can't do it alone, and I think that's why working with the community is so essential. It's just too big of a park, and there's only 80 staff. So, 80 is a lot, but we can only be in so many places at so many times.
Amazing. Thank you.
Any other questions?
May I ask a question?
Please, Isaac.
It is regarding archaeological digs and heritage tourism. How it's connected together? For example, archaeological digging of indigenous sites with heritage tourism. Sorry, my English.
Thanks, Isaac. Really great question. I think I mentioned that we do work with 10 10 First Nations with historic and present day connection to the park. We talk a lot about co-design, but I think we need to go further here. It's about empowerment, and I think for us, we're not in a hurry to develop that. We need to do this slowly and with an intention with our Indigenous partners. And I think that's most important. I think we're trying to build a relationship here that is resilient and that will last many generations. So I think there's a tendency for us to try to move quickly with things. And I think we've built such great foundational relationships with our Indigenous partners that I think in the fullness of time, if they see opportunities there as it relates to, frankly, their cultural heritage and their ancestors who are buried in the ground, there is a National Historic Site in the park, Bead Hill, which is one of Canada's largest intact Iroquoian villages below ground. There's a lot we can do. There are many, 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 many archaeological sites with great cultural heritage importance, but we need to develop it and build it up slowly, and only if it's appropriate to do so, only with the blessing and the leadership of our Indigenous partners.
Thank you very much, Omar.
Thanks, Isaac.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question, Omar. You mentioned a lot of, one thing I found really interesting that you mentioned was the existing buildings that are being preserved on the site. And I'm wondering, I know that one that you mentioned, some of them were turned into social housing. I'm wondering if there's any plans for those to be turned into sort of like revenue generators, like you mentioned, like B&Bs or even restaurants, if you see that happening.
Yeah, thanks for, usually I talk about that a little bit more. Thanks a lot, Brian, for asking that question. Absolutely, like the future of the park is in these buildings in many respects. So we have 3 buildings that are considered federal heritage buildings. The challenge with these buildings is that they're really expensive to refurbish. Like we're talking about, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is something where we're really working hard to attract interest and capital from entrepreneurs and people that, small businesses that are appropriate for a national park, and where they can see themselves potentially opening a restaurant, a cafe, a B&B. We've got these assets, but they need to be invested in to be saved and recapitalized. So I think that's our great challenge. We're working on putting out what are known as RFIs, or request for interest, just to determine what the market interest is. You know, it's actually pretty hard to find people who want to invest like $300,000 in an old house, but people are there or businesses are there that do want to do this, and our job is to, when we're ready, to go out with and also to go out in a way that's helpful. So I think in order to attract investment, we have to make sure that all of our foundations are solid, all of our staff are hired, that our processes are clear, and then we make it really easy for them to conduct business. We set what the expectations are, and these are the rules of working in a national park, and off you go. I think we still have some developmental work to do because we're a new entity and we're still developing our processes. But I really believe, like Field of Dreams style, if you build it, they will come. These trails are so important. Once we get the trails in, then trails are going to go by all these houses, and I think people are going to see opportunities for themselves across the park landscape over time. You know, that trail is really popular. If I put a lemonade stand here, or if I open a coffee shop, I think that could be really successful. We're really hoping that people start to see those opportunities in the park, and we've got these houses which can help get us there over time.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Omar. I have a question for you. You know, and it's related to the COVID crisis, of course, and everybody's increasingly saying to everyone, you know, you have to be outdoors, you have to be in nature. It's good for your health, it's good for, you know, your mental health, et cetera, et cetera. And I was wondering, with us having such a large park, you know, within driving distance, whether there's some efforts to organize opportunities for the urbanites, you know, the people who live downtown, to actually go and enjoy the park. You know, and I'm thinking about organized procedures with public transportation, you know, for people to actually go there and make it easier for people to go to the park.
Hi, Fred, good to see you again, and thanks for your question. So in the times of non-COVID, we've had a relatively successful shuttle bus in partnership with TD Bank and Mountain Equipment Co-op, run by a great organization known as Park Bus, who has worked a lot with Ryerson over the years. I'm sure you know them personally, Boris and Alex. So we very much believe in this, and this is, I think, very much in our DNA to try to make the park accessible to a range of people and remove barriers accessibility barriers. And even though the park is 30 minutes from downtown, that is like, that is very, very, very far for people who don't have cars or from certain socioeconomic brackets. So we're very aware of that. Challenge during COVID is that it's just really difficult right now to self-organize in groups and people, and I think it's just not worth the risk for us in terms of we've had to really prioritize right now what we're doing, and there's just too great of a public health risk and a mental health strain for our staff. It's hard to keep the operations flowing for everyone in the world right now. And so we're doing the best we can. I think we're really sensitive to introduce new things right now that can be stressful. But I think as we come out of the pandemic, and hopefully that's not too far down the road, then we can get back to making sure that we continue to remove barriers for accessibility and bring people in. We've worked with a lot of great community groups that have shuttled in newcomers and a range of different communities that don't live near the park. We've done that many, many, many times over the years, and it's something that we must try to continue to do.
Good, thank you.
I have a question. I'm going to follow on from Frederick's point. I'm really curious, Omar, about what struck me in your presentation was there was a lot of ROI type measures, like if we spend this much money, we get this much back in this, that, and the other. And I'm kind of fascinated, but I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? When you're in the situation that you're in, offering the service that you're offering, and you're trying to get money from different places. And of course, you need to demonstrate the value of the different things that you do. And I guess I have a two-part question. I guess, do you ever feel frustrated by that? And also, are there innovative ways? So for example, we talked about, subsidizing, paying for a bus to go from downtown Toronto for people in low socioeconomic areas to go to the park. So that costs money, but the value of that might not be an economic value, right? Like if you drive people in low socioeconomic areas from downtown to the park, it's not like they're going to be spending money in the gift shop and you're making X amount of money. The value in that comes from the awareness, the education, the health, the fitness, and that becomes, and just even the sense of well-being and feeling happy and connected. But that's really difficult to measure and to say, well, if we spend $10,000 on a bus, we're going to make $50,000 back. How do you? And so I guess my question is, does that ever frustrate you and people in the similar situation? And is it really important to demonstrate the economic value for all of those types of things, or are funders, partners open to that more kind of maybe qualitative aspect of, well, if we do this for this group, maybe we won't make more money, but we will build relationships, education, awareness, fitness, whatever it is?
That's such a good question, Tom. So I feel like, how do you measure the intangibles? That's so challenging, and I feel like I would turn to you and say, hey, can you help us measure this? It doesn't frustrate me. Maybe perhaps it should frustrate me, but it doesn't. I really enjoy I'm kind of a nerd in these numbers, although I'm not an economist or researcher by any means, but I get a lot from them. I derive a great amount of value from the insights. I also think it's a bit foolhardy, because how do you put a value on some of these things? Like it's kind of nonsense in a way to try to quantify ecosystem services and food production for their inherent values. And yet it's an interesting kind of challenge. So one thing though, what I'm noticing, we recently met with a really great foundation. And that's the future of this park, is like, yes, Government of Canada is very well funded and has its means to operate the park, et cetera. But we also have to look for external opportunities as much as possible. And we met recently with an excellent foundation. And I think more and more people are valuing less the numbers and more like the values. And that was really clear from this meeting, where they're really interested in one of our sites in the park and bringing it back to life. And I was really honest with them and said, we're never going to be able to bring in the numbers here that would justify, like, clearly they're looking for visibility, right? Their brand awareness. We do great things in the community. And I, right off the bat, you're not going to get that here because this site has carrying capacity limitations. It's not in a place that's, connected to public transit. There's a lot of things that are not going for this site in terms of like maybe the regular brand awareness that you're after. And there's a huge openness because I think the values are really important, and it's good to see that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I've seen this that big discussion play out in different fields and scenarios, and I mean, so much of what happens in a situation is not measurable economically or quantitatively, and perhaps it's a qualitative approach of I've seen some interesting studies where people in a situation, I mean, one that comes to mind, maybe where it is in Alberta parks. I think there was a study with new immigrants in 2010-ish, and they qualitatively spoke with people at the time that they were using the park, but also some period afterwards, and and like, how does that experience now fit into it was with new immigrants, and so 6 or 12 months after, I forget what it was, but people were saying things like, it makes me feel that I'm now part of Canadian culture a bit more, because I understand what a park is and the mountains are and how people use it, and when I hear in popular culture how the mountains are important, now I've seen the mountains and I experience them and I feel a bit more connected that way. That's stuff that can be told and explained, but not really in a scale question, yes, no, that type of thing. It's an interesting approach.
And it's so important because I think, the connection to the land is immense. And I think, especially for newcomers, like what does it mean to live in Canada? What does it mean to be Canadian? And I think it all comes back to the land and the relationship we have with the land. And I think that the more we can share that vision and the experiences, crucially, I think the greater the appreciation will be for these places, and the more that people will care for them, or so the argument goes. But yeah, it's incredibly challenging to quantify that. And do we even need to? Well, I think that, like you said, people are looking for value sets, and so I think we kind of need both.
Thanks. Any other questions for Omar? Comments, questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Great, Patrick. Thanks.
Sure, I'll turn on my camera. First of all, can you hear me? Is my microphone okay? Cool. So I have a question regarding a study that I found out just 2 weeks ago. It was discovered through a podcast, and I was very interested, and I gained more research, and I found something through a CTV article that I think would be very useful, and I'd like your opinion on it. There's something called, it was discovered by a family physician in BC about something called nature therapy, and how she has discovered, and I'll quote this in an article, where studies have shown that exposure to nature helps to lower anxiety, counter depression, and improve blood pressure, immune function, and sleep. And so basically, she discovered that people who become more intact how do I say this? Intact with nature, more with nature, can help lower depression. And she has founded this organization called Park Prescriptions, an initiative of the BC Park Foundation that's where healthcare providers can write a prescription to that advises patients to get out with nature, whether walking or biking, for at least 2 hours a week, and track their progress at follow-up appointments. So I'd like your opinion on this new initiative, and whether your park would be open to discussing with medical doctors about, and the Ontario Parks Association, and medical students, and all kinds of doctors in Ontario about implementing this program to patients who suffer from mental health and can how would you say suffer, yeah, and can use this prescription to get 2 hours a week by just exploring the park. Hopefully I answered this question. Good.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, great question. And thanks for sharing that. I had heard about that prescription program. I read about that briefly. I think it's brilliant. I think it's great. Wow. Like, I think that person should really be lauded for coming up and with that initiative and doing that work. We have a similar program here called Mood Walks. And we have a partnership with a hospital in Scarborough. I see there's someone on the call on the video named Marilyn. Is that like the Marilyn, like one of our greatest volunteers ever? Because I think actually we have a volunteer a Parks Canada volunteer on the call who's a big played a big part in the Mood Walks program at the hospital. I think, yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant, and it's something that we'd be very happy to explore further here. It's great. I mean, the health outcomes and benefits. Yes, it is Marilyn. There we go. I knew it.
Hi, Omar.
Hi, Marilyn. Great to see you.
Yeah, those mood walks are phenomenal. And the interesting thing, the part I find the most interesting is at the beginning of the walk, we have a conversation with the people taking part in the walk, and they're all young adults. And they share with us how they're feeling in that moment in time. And then we go out on this walk, and my part of the walk is just to natter on about what we're seeing as we're going, and it's a lot of fun. And I've done them in pouring rain and all kinds of things. But then at the end of the walk, we regroup again, and we have that same conversation. And it is so fascinating and enlightening and very fulfilling as a part of it, to see the differences in many of those people after that one single walk. And then the other fulfilling thing about it is to see people coming back, same people in many of the walks. So yeah, that is a great program. And I had heard about that prescription program as well. And it was the first thing I thought of, Omar, is, oh my God, that's just like our mood walks.
Yeah, thanks, Marilyn. Marilyn's an incredible community leader and volunteers for many organizations, but has been one of our most incredible volunteers for many years now. Marilyn has a lot of love to give and is incredibly generous. And yeah, so anyway, thank you for chiming in on the Mood Walks, which is a brilliant program.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Omar? I was particularly interested also about the point you made that the park is ripe for tourism operators to start engaging, and I kind of want to share that entrepreneurial message with some of our students that, you know, that's a really interesting potential opportunity. And do you have anything more to say about that? Is it how does that work?
Well, it's ripe, but I feel it's still too soon, like a little bit. I think that we're in the establishment phase of the park, so I feel like once that foundational infrastructure is in place, then everything else turns to, in my mind, like restoration and program development. And then when tour operators do want to come in the park, like they're going to have a rich menu of things to choose from. Like, oh, on Friday night, I'm going to go listen to the story, like around a campfire. Or on Saturday, you know, I'm going to go to the education and community center and like take in some Indigenous programming. Like, I feel like we really want to get these things going as fast as possible. But I think in order for us to be really successful and sustainable, like we need this foundational infrastructure in place. But my message to students is, and will be, like, and to anyone is like, there are opportunities here for you. Like, just look at the tour operators in Banff or a comparable sized park or Central Park, you know, look at all the associated economic benefits and the number of entrepreneurs who are making a good living, doing something that they love in a low impact way on the environment, sharing their knowledge and passion, or bringing a service to park visitors that is essential. You can't buy a sandwich in the park right now. You can't get a coffee in the park. You know, you can't do you can't rent a bike. You can't rent a canoe. Like, there are opportunities here to do something and to build a career and to have fun and to feel like, you know, you're making a difference, but maybe just not quite yet. Soon.
Sounds like a good topic for a class project or a competition or something. That, you know, come up with a good idea. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And any comments or questions for Omar? All right. Well.
Oh, sorry. I was going to.
Oh, go ahead.
Just one more question. Just sort of more in general, with Parks Canada, I'm interested to know about how much sort of cross collaboration there is between the different national parks, and if the superintendents are more like empowered to kind of take on each park as its own separate entity, or if there's more like strategic visions that you have to align to.
Yeah, good question, Brian. Well, on the collaboration with other national parks, absolutely. It's a great family. Like, every Wednesday I meet with all the superintendents in Ontario. You know, we have a little huddle and just touch base. And then I meet regularly with superintendents from across the country. So I think, and yeah, like, I've got colleagues and friends now, like, all across the country. So I think that's great thing, like, great workplace culture in that respect, and really like pan-Canadian in that way. And I think the good news in that respect is that, yeah, everyone's seen everything before. So me as a younger superintendent, like, I've got people that have mentored me, have been very generous with me, that I still call up from time to time to get help or get advice. Like, there's so much wisdom out there, and it's good to seek it, right? So I think, but similarly, I'll call colleagues that aren't, you know, I'll call any colleague. I think there's so many knowledgeable people. Sorry, the second part of your question, I'll try to answer it more concisely.
Yeah, the second part was more like if there's a kind of guiding, or like almost like a branding strategy that Parks Canada sets out. Like, I'm trying to compare it as if it's like a chain of restaurants or hotels or something. That's because that's my background. I'm just wondering if there's a lot of like standards and overall like corporate strategies that are kind of imposed on you that you need to meet.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we have a pretty robust reporting framework with like business planning cycles and setting work plans and all those things. Quite a bit of that. So an appropriate amount of structure for sure.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions or comments? I have one from Shiv. Hello, Omar. I'm curious to learn more about the building and student learning space you're planning to develop. I think there is an opportunity for a think tank or social innovation business accelerator, which could help you develop some of the solutions the park requires. It is also a great way to indulge students and other community stakeholders. So I guess that's to the point you were talking about, offering students a quiet study space and that type of stuff.
Thank you very much for the question, Shivraj. And yeah, there are tremendous opportunities. So we're going to have a cafe in there. Who's going to run it? You know, a social enterprise, an accelerator. That sounds amazing to me. So all those things are going to be developed now that we have the architecture and engineering firm in place, and our project team assembled, and they're coming up with concepts, and they're trying to answer these questions right now. So, hey, if you have an idea, let us know. But someone's going to be running it, and it won't be us.
All right, I think Shiv is writing an email to you right now. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, I think we will wrap it up there. I just want to say thank you very much, Omar. I really appreciate your time. Engaging speaker, and it's really interesting because it crosses so many aspects of the program that we cover, right? From research, which is what we're talking about today, but also all the service and the different activities and the experience management and all that kind of ideas. And so thank you. It's really useful information. I'd also like to really point out Brian. So Brian, who is HTMResearch here, has been with us for, is it 1 or 2 years, Brian? I lost 1 or 2 years.
The Institute just coming up on 1 year now.
Just coming up 1 year.
Yeah.
All right. And he's accomplished so much in that year with newsletters and podcasts and setting up this series. I think we've had around 6 or 8 of these events. So it's been really good. And Brian is about to graduate. So I just want to say thank you, Brian, for all the work you've done for the Institute. Congratulations and good luck with the couple of things you got planned. Excited to hear how they go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone else who's shown up. It's been a great conversation, great discussion. So this has been the final speaker series for our academic year. We're going to take the summer off, but we do hope to be back in the fall and the winter. I do encourage, if you haven't already, to follow the Institute on social media. We're on LinkedIn and all the other stuff. We have a newsletter, so go to htmresearch.ca and sign up for our newsletter. And thank you. It's been lovely to see you all. Enjoy your spring, enjoy your summer. If other people graduating, good luck. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Omar. Bye.
Cheers,
Everyone.
thanks. Take care.
Salut Omar, merci.
Thank you.
Merci. À la prochaine.
See you.